restaurant, but never fully studied it. He also thinks to himself that with just a slight tweak in the technique of preparing sashimi, it can taste completely different. And as he recognizes himself not to be the most prepared chef, and as he doesn't want Lichul to leave unsatisfied, he asks him if he can add him to his friends list so that when he becomes better at cooking, he'll invite him to eat some really delicious sashimi. And now back in the real world, Mr. Lim tells them that it's time to close up the restaurant as it's break time. As they all sit down, Mr. Lim sees that Aram is working on something and is really focused, so he asks him about it, and our protagonist tells him that he's practicing making sashimi. Mr. Lim is really interested in it and asks if they can expect sashimi to be on the menu soon. YouTube guy, his mouth stuffed with food, says that if that's the case and they'll have sashimi, he'll be able to make all sorts of mukbang videos. He also adds that he thinks that if the sashimi becomes the food on the menu at their restaurant, that it'll be really popular. Aram, taking all their conversations in, tells them that he's actually not practicing it for the new menu, and silently to himself says that it's just that his pride is on the line, as he recalls Lichul telling him that they'll be meeting when fishing at times and that there's no need for them to add each other to the friends list. That really seems to have taken a toll on our protagonist, as he can't stop thinking about it. Even Miri noticed that our protagonist has been working extra hard these past few days and is not sure what might be the cause of it. But being optimistic as she is, she assumes surprisingly correctly that it's because it's Aram's mission as a chef to make delicious food, and so he feels really responsible for that task. Miri really admires this attitude and wants herself to follow his lead and do her best with her tasks. She then walks up to Aram and tells him that from there on she'll be his kitchen assistant. He asks her if it'll be too difficult for her, and she tells him that it won't be a problem as she'll learn little by little from him and in that way be able to help him with some stuff, and also that she doesn't want to be on the front desk the whole time. Our protagonist is happy with this arrangement and agrees to it. And now we see Aram day in and day out practicing making sashimi. In both the game and in reality, he is really putting in the work to perfect his sashimi abilities. He needs to take this to a perfection in order to be able to please all of his customers without an exception. And sometimes later, we see people gathering at the fishing spot asking for rice's sashimi, and there is a lot of people. Simon is wondering who these people are and what are they doing there, and they tell him that they have reservations for rice's sashimi. And then we see our protagonist coming out of a shed looking all tired, and he tells them that there isn't any sashimi for that day because he hasn't been using his knife so much, so that his stamina just depleted and he can't make it anymore. People are really disappointed hearing this, but then they notice Mountain Sun guy and immediately start rushing towards him, asking him if he could make them some sashimi. Simon is not concerned with this, just thinking that this crowd of people is too noisy. And Rice himself is pretty curious about this and wants to see if Mountain Sun is really around here. And now we see Mountain Sun telling the crowd that he's up for making sashimi as long as they are willing to pay 10,000 won for each plate. People are not concerned with the price as they desperately continue to ask for his sashimi. They are really fangirling over Mountain Sun, and some of them brought their own fish and want him to use it for their sashimi. After some time getting cheered on and complimented, Mountain Sun finally says that he'll do it. He asks them to time him to see how long it'll take him to do it and starts slicing up the fish straight away. And we can see that this guy is no joke in terms of preparing sashimi, as he skillfully goes through filleting the fish with ease, slicing them one by one without making any mistakes. And he does it all with graceful confidence. It's a sight to be seen as he artistically works with the fish, showing that this is his second nature. And it takes him 7 minutes exactly to prepare this breathtakingly delicious looking sashimi. The notification says that it's the great assorted sashimi that gives top satiety stats for the ones that consume it. People are amazed at how something something so tasty looking can be prepared in mere 7 minutes. Rice too is amazed seeing this display of greatness, as he recognizes that even for a pro chef, to make food that gives that much satiety prepared so quickly is a big deal and shouldn't be taken for granted. And this makes our protagonist ambitiously daydreaming of how he'd be happy to achieve even a small part of what this chef just did. And he also has a wish of meeting him in person, as he wants to know what his real skills would be like there. Then Rice realizes that he didn't eat anything for some time and asks Simon if he's up for having some food with him. Simon agrees, and Rice is already on it soon after making a food that's called Great Grilled Fish. Simon, seeing the food looking extremely tasty, asks if he's even allowed to eat food this awesome. Rice tells him that since he rented the house for him to cook in, that it goes without saying that he gets to eat this delicious meal. Our protagonist is really loving how he made this grilled fish and thinks it couldn't have been prepared any better. It's soft, savory and light, just the way it's supposed to be. Then, drawing his attention away from his enjoyment, Simon, now all serious, says that eating this food made him remember about the ocean. It's like some of the memories start coming right back. Our protagonist suddenly got interested in what Simon has to say about this. Rice thinks that it was really a good idea to get closer to this NPC, as he could guess Simon knew something about the ocean. He just hopes it's not somewhere far away. Then Simon starts giving him some convoluted instructions that seems impossible to decipher, and our protagonist asks him if he's just trying to demotivate him from going because there's no way he has to do all those things to get to the ocean. Simon then tells him that there's a boundary somewhere in the forest, but for him to remember clearly, Simon thinks he needs to eat some more fish, and this time ocean fish would be the best. And just as he says this, a notification window pops up saying that the quest is open, and it's called Cooking for Simon, where as a reward he has a chance to get a rare hidden quest. And we see our protagonist immediately getting ready with Meow to go on a new adventure in search of the hidden ocean. So in order to find the ocean, Rice had to travel a long way. He started with Moito restaurant in Bedram, where he met with the chef there and ate his food, recollecting the times when he helped him. Then our protagonist, together with Meow, went beyond the land of abundance, running into a lot of nice people there. He also ended up going past Rosalind's restaurant in Tricio, where he too left a lot of fun memories, where he had to run away from huge crowds of his fans asking him to make them some delicious food. And now finally, the finish line can be seen. On this destined day, we can see Rice back where his journey started. He tells Meow that this is a place where he first started hunting, a place where he helped the Red Spider Queen and where he caught the Rake Lizard Princess. Bros, I'm feeling nostalgic, and it was just like 2 weeks that we started doing this manhwa and it feels so nostalgic already. I like it. Now back to the story. As he was thinking about the Spider Queen, he comes across the tallest tree in the area, where he was told by Simon to start his search for the ocean. So according to Simon's instructions, he's first supposed to move 20 steps to the east, and then again 20 steps to the north, and then to the west 5 steps. And then finally, at the end, he needs to move 10 steps to the north, and that should be it. And as soon as he finishes those last steps, bright light starts coming out in front, blinding our protagonist for a moment. And as his eyesight starts recovering, he starts hearing the magnificent sounds of the ocean swaying from one side to the other, and then an awe-inspiring sight starts slowly appearing with a beautiful ocean with a huge moon in its background. It's such a breathtaking view that Rice is absolutely mesmerized with it, and me too. The smell of the ocean brings back some memories to him, as he hasn't felt this smell in quite some time, and there's nothing as pleasant as the smell of the ocean. Meow too can feel it, and then without much waiting, Rice thinks to himself that it's finishing time as his quest awaits, but little does he know that he's being observed by a lady hiding in the bushes. She seems a bit confused by our protagonist's behavior, as he's displaying too much childish passion being here on the ocean. Meanwhile, we can see Aegis with a group of people people casually eliminating some players in the newbie area, using the worst logic to justify their actions. He says that if the other beginner players don't like being killed, then that they themselves should kill. Some of the Aegis team members tell him that they are not having much fun since it's easy to eliminate these newbies and they don't drop any significant items. We see some newbies trying to run away, shouting that Aegis and his team members should be reported. And then as Aegis thinks that their murder quest for the day is done, he sees meow and can't resist its cuteness. And as Aegis approaches it to have a better look at it, he remembers that Rice was carrying a pet like this around on his shoulders, and then his mood starts changing as he really dislikes Rice. Out of rage, he takes his mace and swings at meow, but meow quickly evades it, and as he was searching for it, meow comes from the back and with a lightning speed trips Aegis so that he falls down flat on his face. It seems that meow too has some quests that he's completing now with these guys. Aegis orders his team to fight the cat with all they have, as it's definitely a challenge for them. And right at that moment, Rice shows up disappointedly telling Aegis that he can't believe that he's still doing these killings. Meow is still relentlessly attacking the other team members of Aegis, and they can't believe how strong this little cute cat can be. Meow actually managed to incapacitate some of the crew members with his confusion skill, so they literally can't move. And then a bright light draws their attention, and when they look at the light, they can see cute Electron with sparks coming out all around him, ready to have a go at them. We see our protagonist having a fight with Aegis, and Aegis is telling him that he always ruins things for them. Rice tells him that he's not the one that starts the fights, and they continue to have their fierce battle, but we can definitely see that our protagonist has an upper hand here with the upgrades he got from the recent events. Aegis is struggling, but is able to barely fight off Rice's various attacks, and right when Aegis gains some confidence, Rice shoots him down with his poison pouch skill, and sometime later we see that Aegis and his team got tied up with a rope, and Aegis is raging, trying to free himself but without success. Aegis tells him that he's in some guild and that our protagonist is on their list, but Rice, dismissing all of it, says that this was just unnecessary, and then tells his pets that they should go back to Simon. And he also gets a notification telling him that his reputation increased because he caught some murderers. And then later that day, we see Rice coming back to where Simon is fishing. Simon asks him if he found the ocean, to what Rice, all excited, tells him that he managed to find it and that he already caught some sea saltwater fish and cooked it as soon as he caught it so that it can keep the freshness. Rice then shows Simon the prepared fish, and Simon's jaw drops as if he saw the most beautiful thing in his life. Basically, the photo of me. The notification comes out describing the dish Rice just pulled out for Simon to see and admire, and it's called the best sea bream sashimi, which increases all kinds of stats. Simon can't believe that our protagonist managed to catch a fish as big as that, and we learn from Rice that sea bream of that deluxe size would have a pretty high market price because it's rare and of good quality. It's of good quality because you can cut it into large pieces and it still will keep its texture. It's really the perfect size. Our protagonist thinks that he did a good job as he practiced a lot for this. And as Simon was still eyeing it out, Rice decides to have a try at it himself. So he'll first dip the sashimi piece into wada sauce, which is sea cucumber sauce, and as he places sashimi in his mouth, tingles immediately start rushing through his entire body. It's such a special taste that when he closes his eyes, it transports him somewhere in space. This doesn't just have a good taste, the texture of it feels alive, and the taste is so vivid you can almost see the taste, no matter how strange that sounds. Sea bream is best to be eaten with sea urchin and abalone, and this sashimi is made from a fish that is strong and hard to catch, not to mention expensive. So tasting good is definitely not how you go about describing the taste of this delicacy. And this fish is in season, so the fat plump flesh and the fullness of the sesame oil makes it taste like beef tartare. This savory taste even exceeds the limits of the meat to whey ratio, with having just the the perfect amount of meat on it. On top of that, the sauce adds flavor to it and it feels like the ocean is spreading through Rice's whole body. And our protagonist can't believe that what he just prepared comes from the fish that he himself caught. And he was absolutely enjoying his meal, not thinking of anything else, and then a new notification window comes up saying that Michelin's interest went up. And this might be the proudest moment for Rice as he lifts his sashimi in the air, feeling like he's on top of the world. If taste could be seen, his sashimi would have the most vivid and beautiful views out there. Simon too, eating with self-satisfaction, enjoying every turn of the food in his mouth, says that this is really a once-in-a-lifetime seafood dish. And then a notification pops up saying that Simon's quest is complete as he fed him with what he wanted and his reward is a rare hidden quest. And as our protagonist was thinking of what kind of this new quest might be, Simon starts thanking Rice for making this delicious seafood meal for him and says that because of the food, his memories that he previously forgot are now coming back to him. Rice is really happy that people enjoy his meal. Even little Meow had the best time and is now snuggling up to our protagonist out of sheer happiness. Then Lichel calmly adds that he too enjoyed it and that this was the best sashimi he ever tried, and then thanks Rice for making it. Our protagonist at first starts thinking to himself that Lichel is now being polite, which probably means that the food really suited his taste, and then he realizes that Lichel wasn't here before. So where did he come from and started eating his sashimi? Bro just showed up out of nowhere. Lichel cheerfully laughs and tells Rice that he already told him that he's always nearby, and the reason why he didn't notice him was because Rice was enjoying his food too much. Getting over it, our protagonist nervously asks Lichel if this time it was a success, to what Lichel confirms, adding that indeed is a huge and phenomenal success. Lichel continues saying that it's weird for him that they can eat food in the game like this, especially this good of a food. He says that in real life he's actually 90 years old and our protagonist was able to fulfill his wish before he passed away. Bros, this got real so quick, what? And then a friend's request window comes saying that Lichel wants him to be his friend. Lichel then says that since our protagonist fulfilled the wish he had before going to the afterlife, he has to give him his thanks. And Rice said that there's really no need for anything, but the old man Lichel insists, telling him that when an adult offers you something that you should always accept it. And then he goes on to give his full name, which is Park Lichel, and he adds that if he looks up his name, he should be able to quickly find him. If he decides to find him, he should drop by his office. Lichel then asks Rice for his real life name, and after a bit of hesitation, our protagonist decides to give the old man his full name. Lichel is really happy with it, telling him that he'll remember his name. He bows down and then says that since he already ate, he'll log off the game. And as he was disappearing, he says that he'll be waiting for the day our protagonist comes and finds him. Rice tells, waving at him, that he will come to greet him. And we see that Meow is still distrustful of Lichel as he didn't recover from that scare Lichel gave them by just showing up behind them. And now back to Simon. Rice asks him about the memories that return to him. Simon says that thanks to this food, that the precious memories the devil hid from him finally came back. And then he asks our protagonist if he could come with him as there's a place he wants to show him. Rice is pretty excited about it and tells Simon that he's ready to follow his lead. A few moments later, we see Simon and Rice in front of the doors of a wooden house. Simon knocks on the door saying that it might be too late to return, but that he hopes that someone in there is safe and sound. And then the kid Terry opens the door, calling Simon Dad. Rice peeks out from the back of Simon to see who opened the doors, and to his shock, it's Terry. Terry asks if it's really his dad that came back, and Simon, now all happy, says that he finally managed to come back. Our protagonist is flabbergasted by learning this as he stands there with his mouth open as Simon and Terry embrace each other. Terry is crying, asking Simon where he went and why did he come this late. And Simon is apologizing to his son for waiting for such a long time, and now they're both both crying. The kid asks Simon where his mom is, and Simon tells him that since his memories came back, they can expect Terry's mom to soon come back as well. Rice is just admiring how all these quests are interconnected and how it's really meticulous. And as Terry and Simon were talking about looking for Simon's wife, a woman's voice calls Simon's name, and when they turn to see who it is, they see Luna, who is Terry's mother. She's really happy that her family is safe, and our protagonist is really surprised to see a lady elf. She says that her memories of the family were gone, and then when Rice, who she calls an adventurer, came to the ocean where she was staying, he opened the forest path for her, and then her memories of them came back. And now we see an adorable scene of the whole family hugging, telling each other never to leave the family again. This really inspires Rice, that he tells them that he'll make them a dish that matches this reunion of theirs. Then Rice offers Terry the best dish he wanted, and after eating it, a notification window shows up telling Rice that he completed Terry's quest as well, and he acquired a luxury magic bow that increases his attack by 120 points. Plus, he also gets basic archery skill, and right as Rice was thinking that he finished with the quest he had to do with his family, Terry cheerfully tells him an information that he might need, which is the name of the rocky mountain that they can see from here, and it's called Guba, and this is where demons that receive orders from the devil are. He continues saying that that guy is the one that is watching Laberton and bothering them. Terry says that since it's dangerous, Rice should be careful. This triggers our protagonist's memory of that time when the goblin creature popped out of the water, which means that no matter how peaceful and safe this area might look, it really isn't a safe zone. And then a new notification appears, opening a new quest for our protagonist. It says that Rice needs to eliminate the dark followers on Gaba Mountain and in that way save the Gale. And the reward for this one is a rideable Gale and the Dark Sword, both of which sound awesome, bros. Rice is really happy with this quest and decides to go to Gaba Mountain straight away. And in the meantime, we see a guy barely surviving, coughing out some blood. He then gets up from the ground and now kneeling, tells the other guy, giving him a menacing look, that he thought he could finish it this time and how cowardly it is to fight while on a horseback. This triggers the masked guy and his horse starts rearing, feeling his rider's anger. The masked guy then says that he's just trying to do his utmost for Sir Raiden, who we know is the demon devil lord in this game. And as he was getting ready for his final charge at the kneeling guy, the purple arrow whizzes past the masked guy, barely missing him. The guy turns around to see who it is, and he sees our protagonist standing there, already preparing another arrow for release. Rice says that he now understands why the reward for that quest was related to archery, as it's hard to deal with mounted soldiers close up. He comments that he first needs to get the rider to fall from the horse, and then he'll be able to fight him on the ground. And now we see this dark follower redirecting his charging attack at our protagonist as he's shouting, "For Lord Raiden!" And Rice's bow is already tensed up with another arrow loaded up to max and ready to get released at the riding fiend. But he's patiently waiting for the right moment when the masked rider gets really close to Rice so that our protagonist has less of a chance of missing him, and even if he knocks him down, he'll be closer to him to finish him off. And as he approaches, so does Rice fire his arrow at him, hitting him straight in the armor and in that way actually knocking him down. As he combined both the charge up and the distance, he manages to produce a critical hit, which is why the dark follower was completely taken down off of his horse. And as soon as our protagonist sees that his opponent fell down, he immediately orders both Electron and Meow to flank their enemy so that they can do an all-out attack. The dark follower notices them jumping on him and wonders what these cotton balls are. He easily defends their attacks, even sending Electron flying to the side. He calls our protagonist, telling him to stop messing with him and fight him himself. And as he said those words, he looks up only to see Rice already in mid-air with an arrow fully charged up. The dark follower patronizingly says that the same attack won't work the second time, but then we see both Meow meow, and Electron ready to have another go at him from different sides. Our protagonist releases his arrow and sends his blast shot at his enemy, while Meow comes from the back of him, tripping him up without the masked follower even realizing. Meow hits his legs while Electron simultaneously hits his head, making the dark follower lose his balance and unable to defend Rice's fully charged attack. And right as the dark follower realizes that he was careless for allowing them to trick him like that, the arrow blasts him with such an impact that the tremor is felt in its surroundings. And as the guy was falling unconscious, he let out his last word, praising Lord Raiden. Notification then comes up saying that Rice successfully defeated a dark follower, and as a reward he gets the Gale and the Dark Sword. And another one comes up saying that the dark followers are gathering information about him. The third notification window tells our protagonist that this quest has been recorded in mainstream history, where he gets his own page that describes his heroic actions in this quest. Rice was now celebrating this with his pets, seeing that he's really happy that everything worked out as they planned. And right as they were celebrating, the system alarm starts sounding out and a new notification comes up with the information on the Dark Sword. It says that it's a cold and sharp sword condensed in dark energy with an attack of 80. Rice thinks that it looks pretty cool with the dark magic circling around it. It's a really powerful sword, and then a horse approaches our protagonist, sniffing him out. Rice immediately recognizes this horse to be Gale, and as he gets a better look of it, we see a beautiful white horse. Rice says that he read in the notification that he'd get a rideable horse, which is really interesting, but since he doesn't know how to ride a horse, he wonders if he'll be okay with it. I mean, if he can't ride it, he can at least cook it. A new notification comes up saying that the newly acquired mount will automatically be controlled upon riding and solving our protagonist's problem. He basically just needs to mount it and it'll be like he already knows how to ride a horse, like in every MMORPG game ever. And not long after, we see Rice already mounting Gale and riding off. After some time enjoying the ride, our protagonist stumbles upon a place called Beatrice Fortress and decides to go down to visit it. Rice remembers that NPCs mentioned this place when he completed the Marina quest in the past, and as he enters the fortress, he sees that it's full of life and it looks pretty busy, which is not how he imagined it to be when he saw it from the outside. There are people out and about and inviting intention for different things. Some are inviting for a quest and some are selling or buying different kinds of items. Meow too seems to be excited about the place. Who knows what type of stuff they can come across here. Then across them, Rice notices a red-hooded lady yelling at a guy that's kneeling on the ground looking really sick. She tells him to eat some food, but he keeps refusing, saying that it makes him wanna puke. She then tells him that she thinks it's tasty and it's not like he's gonna die from eating it, so he should just eat it. He offers her to eat it instead, but she says that she's already full as she ate. This lady's name is Eliza, and she's really torturing this guy with the food that he obviously dislikes, and she's forcing him to eat it. Our protagonist interrupts them by asking the hooded lady if they are doing a quest. She tells him that she's trying to bring the likability up of that NPC there by cooking for him and feeding him. Our protagonist, seeing the poisonous looking food, thinks to himself if she's really trying to feed him that. Getting a better look of Rice, the hooded lady recognizes our protagonist to be Rice, and the NPC is throwing up rainbows in the background. It's as if the main ingredient of the food she prepared for him is unicorn poop. Look, even Meow feels bad for him. Now Rice, confirming his identity, makes the hooded lady change her expression to that of admiration, and then she says that she's a huge fan of our protagonist. She introduces herself as Eliza the Alchemist, and I mispronounced her name the first time. Her name is Eliza. And now we see that Rice is not too pleased with her being his fan because she is slightly weird. Eliza then goes on fangirling over our protagonist, saying that she only heard about him on the cafe chats and that she can't believe that she's actually meeting him in person. Eliza kinda reminds Rice of Macho King with the dramatic expression of liking, and then he decides to ask her if he can join her on her quest. She's really happy hearing this and agrees for them to do the quest together. He's probably doing it just to save the poor guy from any more torture. So Rice then offers to cook something and Eliza immediately agrees, as she knows that it'll fix everything for everyone. The NPC seems unwilling to taste any more cooking after he tried Eliza's awful food. Rice, all excited, starts making the food by first cracking open some eggs and then adding some salt and some sugar. After that, he tries some meat and evenly browns both sides over medium heat so that there's less fat. The meat already looks really amazing, and then for his final touch, our protagonist uses his Fire Master ability to burn it together with eggs so that he gets scrambled eggs. It looks really fantastic, but we've come to know that everything made by our protagonist is going to be top notch. Rice adds that he also has ketchup, and if they need it, they can ask him for it. Forgetting about the quest for a moment, overwhelmed Eliza pushes the NPC to the side, saying that the legendary food from the legendary chef Rice she heard so much about is finally in front of her, and she'll be the first one to eat it. This is like definitely the best way to raise reputation with the NPC. Give him poisonous food, almost poisonous food, and then when you give him good food, don't actually give it to him. Push him away so you can try it first. Good job, Eliza. Our protagonist thinks that she's just too over the top and reprimandingly tells her that she should let the NPC eat as well. Realizing that she did overreact, she shyly agrees with it. The NPC starts eating it and he exclaims with deep passion that it's so good that his sense of taste immediately returns. And then the notification window shows up saying that Hidden Quest, Starling's Comeback, is open, where he needs to teach the NPC Starling one recipe, but it's only for Rice. As he's thinking of it, he notices that Eliza grew really quiet and then decides to ask her if she also likes cooking. She passionately says that she does, as it was our protagonist that inspired her with his cooking to give cooking a go, and since then she's been trying out various recipes. She continues saying that somehow one day her job changed into alchemist, and with Meow now approaching her food and getting all hostile towards it, we can safely assume that we know why she changed her profession. Rice then asks Eliza if she wants to join him in making the dish he just made, as he's willing to teach her if she wants to learn. She's really excited about this proposition and accepts it. And in the meantime, somewhere else, we see some people complimenting Mango for his fighting skills and how it was thanks to him that they were able to reach this treasure place. They enthusiastically keep praising him, and Mango is really into it and loves being spoken of in this way. And as he reaches out for the treasure to take it, the game starts glitching a little bit and the notification window comes out telling him that the safety time has reached its limit and that the system is automatically shutting down. And as Mango was desperately saying for it to stop, the game just exits to the loading screen and it says that he's logging out of the game. And now in the real world, we see that Mango is actually that idol singer guy and is really upset for this to have happened and starts raging at the game so much that some guy shows up at his doors looking all worried, asking him what happened. The musician dramatically explains what happened, and the other guy is just disappointed that he'd get so worked up for him over a game. Idol is still being dramatic over it, so the guy just tells him to go easy on the game and that he's gonna go out to get himself some food. Hearing this, the musician sits up normally and tells him that he also wants to eat and that he knows of a really good place where they can have some noodles. The other guy doesn't want to hear of it, as he already has a place in mind where he eats the most delicious bibimbap. But we now learn that these are brothers and they actually want to eat at the same restaurant, but since neither of them did mention the name of the restaurant, they're not aware that it's the same place. Now at the Jamyang's restaurant, it's really busy as Miri is doing her best to catch up with all the orders they are getting non-stop, and we see customers ordering all kinds of dishes this time. It seems that the variety of our chef's food got popular recently. With how hectic it is, even the boss himself has to get involved and help around. Aram is really focused on his cooking and is doing his best to prepare food quickly and the food that is delicious at the same time. Miri Suni is also working at Jamyang's restaurant and we learn that it's her first day today. She's definitely a big help since there's no way Miri could do all these things by herself alone. Yuni tells Miri that she was right to say that this place is super busy and Miri apologizes for her having to be so busy on her first day of work. But they both seem to be happy to see people loving their restaurant this much. Meanwhile, we see the musician Jiwoo with his YouTuber brother heading towards Aram's restaurant, with Jiwoo telling his brother that he should have told him that he was talking about Jamyang restaurant because they could have left their house sooner. Hagyam looks not to be amused with his brother pretending to be in the right. As they arrive at the restaurant, they're welcomed immediately and their orders are taken, and they'll go for 2 perilla oil mac noodles. And not too long after, their orders arrive. As soon as they try it, they are amazed with how good the quality the food is for them. Jiwoo thinks that he definitely didn't miss the restaurant as the taste is the same as the one from the exhibition where he first tried it. Miri, seeing how much they enjoyed the food, starts talking to them about it, saying that she's really glad that she got a break this time as there didn't seem to be any available seats. Hagyam adds that he too noticed that the place is packed with customers and seems really popular. Miri proudly says that it's all thanks to their amazing chef, and Jiwoo is thinking to himself that he actually wants to meet our protagonist today. Hagyam then introduces his brother to Miri, condescendingly saying that he plays games all day, which is why he wanted to take him out for a bit. But Miri recognizes Jiwoo as the famous musician, and then all the attention goes to Jiwoo, making him uncomfortable as he doesn't seem to like being in the spotlight. I mean, for a musician that's definitely weird, but who am I to judge? And as they're having a conversation, Aram comes up to them and seeing Jiwoo, he asks if he's friends with Hagyam. Hagyam says that it's his brother, and then the musician introduces himself, genuinely pleased to have met our protagonist. He then randomly says that nobody should play any games as there is a time limit in Real. This catches Aram's attention, so he asks Jiwoo if he too plays the game called Real. Jiwoo, now all self-important, slurping his noodles, says that he's somewhat of a high level in the game and that his game nickname is Mango. Our protagonist is shocked by this revelation. Memories of silly Mango immediately go through his mind. Miri asks Aram why he looks so surprised, and our protagonist, completely ignoring her, asks Jiwoo if he knows who he is, with an expression expecting him to know. Jiwoo squints his eyes as he's thinking of who he might be and starts realizing from the available information. First, his voice does sound quite familiar, and he's a chef in the game who knows him. And as the name Rice comes to his mind fairly quickly, his expression changes to that of joy as he exclaims our protagonist's name and looks at him with happiness. Jiwoo can't believe that he's also such a good chef in real life and asks him if he cooked for the exhibition as well, and our protagonist confirms it, saying that due to certain circumstances, he had become in charge of cooking there as well. Jiwoo is thinking that this is a fated connection, and Mr. Lim and the kid Jaeyoung are watching this astonishing display of enthusiasm and excitement of people meeting each other. Sometimes later, we see our protagonist back in the game. He decides to check on the guy that he recently met, Lichul, and see some information about him. He tells Meow that after that he can play with it, and Meow seems pleased with this arrangement. And as he checks, we see that Lichul is actually some big shot guy. He's the president of Artlanders Entertainment, which our protagonist recognizes to be one of the top 3 Korean manga companies. He gets slightly overwhelmed not knowing who he really is and starts thinking that it might be fate. And then we see somebody in the background flying and calling our protagonist's name. As Rice turns around and as the guy gets closer, we see that it's Aether on some weird looking flying wooden bicycle, and as he lands next to Rice, he asks Rice what he thinks of his bamboo bicopter. Rice is really in awe of this and compliments him. Aether says that he's actually thinking of making a submarine next, and with a self-satisfied expression says that it's nothing for him as he's a named crafter. He then tells Rice that he came to give him something, and then pulls out a really royal looking sword, saying that he mixed the white snow serpent's blood and created this amazing looking armor blade. And then the notification window pops up showing truly incredible stats, but limiting its usage to once a day. Our protagonist is astonished with the quality of the sword and starts praising Aether for crafting such a beauty. Rice, now holding a sword for a bit, tells Aether that he could also be a great blacksmith with skills. Aether says that he's still not at that level of making weapon items, but that he made this sword that is good enough. He adds that it's all thanks to our protagonist that he could level up this much, as he got these great items to work with. So he tells Rice that he can consider this sword as a repayment. Rice feels really humbled with Aether that just keeps giving him these cool items. As he heard Aether explain a bit about this sword, he asks him what he meant when he told him that he can use the sword as an armor. Aether tells him that he should just think in his head of the word equip, and that should do it. Confused with what he just says, Rice decides to start thinking of this sword in his mind, and all of a sudden, the system registers the word, and then the snow white awesome looking shiny armor starts engulfing our protagonist's body. Similar to the snow white sword, this armor is pretty OP, but has a limit of 30 minutes per usage. Aether, using his special ability, says that the compatibility of armor is perfect for Rice. Our protagonist is really surprised by this, and is trying to move around admiring its build. Aether continues saying that Rice already figured out how to use it, and adds that the durability and performance should be great as well. He also says that the snow white sword is actually a single-handed sword, which means that using it, he'll be able to use another sword beside it and then fight with two swords, dual wield bros. Aether is really proud of this, and he thinks the dual sword fighting style will fit Rice. He then leaps up in the air, shouting back that they should continue winning and enjoying the game. Rice, still not completely over how cool his new equipment is, says bye to Aether. As he is watching Aether flying away from him, Rice thinks to himself, how come he didn't figure out dual wielding swords before? Because its efficiency is really obvious. And a bit later, we see our protagonist really hyped up, telling people that it's difficult completing quests on their own, taking this conversation to a proposition. People get really excited, thinking that he'll help them with their quests. So our protagonist then says that he'll definitely help, and as they all assume their quest to already be completed with Rice's help on their side, our protagonist adds that he'll help them with cooking, which is definitely not what they expected him to say. And now, we see what Rice meant when he was thinking about dual wielding swords efficiency as he's in his new shiny armor. Wielding two swords, but not for fighting, but for chopping different vegetables. People are in shock and think that's not the kind of help they expected, but seeing all the delicious food being prepared, they can't help but to accept this help as well. Rice, absolutely exhilarated, tells them in a very dramatic fashion that with the food he's now making, they can enjoy some extra stamina and strength. People start eating, and now the infectious excitement is felt by everyone as they exclaim that even though they feel their strength and stamina increase, they just don't care as the food is really tasty, and that's all that matters at the moment. In this hectic situation with everyone eating and the high spirits everywhere, some guy tries to get their attention, asking them about doing the quest, but then at that moment, Epicure crash lands right in front of our protagonist, causing a bit of damage around. He then looks at Rice and tells him that he's been looking for him for a long time, and our protagonist innocently asks Epicure why did he show up like that. Rice is pretty surprised by him dropping in like this, and now asks Epicure what's the reason for him looking for Rice. And as he was saying this, his snow white armor starts disappearing as he cancelled the equip function on it. Epicure then sternly, with a visible annoyance, asks our protagonist why doesn't he respond to his DMs? Rice is a bit confused by this, as he didn't even know that he had those. Seeing that our protagonist has no clue what he's talking about, he then says that it doesn't really matter, as he already found him and so he can tell him his request in person. Epicure gets even more serious now. Our protagonist feels a bit uneasy about it and asks Epicure what kind of a request he has for him. Epicure then gets uncomfortably close to him and with an intense air of desperation says that he wants Rice to cook something for him. He's standing there all up Rice's face, staring at him with an increase in intensity. Our protagonist is surprised that he was looking for him for that long for just that reason. Suddenly, Eliza shouts from the rooftop just above them that Epicure shouldn't be bothering Rice and that if he needs food, he can get it from Rice-taught restaurants. Epicure says that he does what he wants. Eliza, then annoyed with Epicure, jumps down at them. Rice seems flabbergasted by her doing this, and as she's falling down, she's yelling all kinds of threats and pulls out a flask with green liquid and comes up with some technique reciting all kinds of chemical formulas. But Epicure, seeing her aiming for him, just moves a bit aside and she crashes down falling flat on her face. Epicure, slightly confused with what she was trying to achieve, asks her if she's dumb, and Rice asks her if she's okay, and Eliza, getting up embarrassed and irritated, shouts that Epicure should consider himself lucky, as alchemists need to memorize all kinds of spells to activate their abilities. Epicure says that his profession is a gourmet, and as such there's nothing wrong for him to look for a skilled chef that can meet his needs. He adds that he also didn't come empty-handed, and then he throws a lot of different types of food in front of them. Among all the foods, Eliza finds a plant called elastic grass, and she tells him that it isn't edible and is curious why would he bring that to them. He tells her that you can never know what's edible until cooked well, which is why he picks everything up. She's really annoyed with him and tells him that the plant is actually used for making plastic. And as soon as our protagonist hears this, an idea comes to his mind that they can use that for making containers, and in that way it would be possible for them to have a delivery service. Knowing that Eliza is an alchemist, he asks her if it would be possible to make disposable items using this plant. Eliza, all excited for her skills finally being needed and recognized, tells him that it definitely is possible if your skills for forming things are at least C rank. And from her facial expression of self-indulgence, it seems that she's exactly that level. He then makes an offer to her, telling her that if she helps him make those items, he'll teach her cooking. This gets her really thrilled, and she of course accepts the deal, as she just runs off shouting that she'll make it right there. Rice tries to tell her something else, but she's already gone. Our protagonist then looks at all the food on the ground and is thinking of how he'll sort all these things out. Epicure is volunteering to help him, but as soon as he looks down, he sees a small kid picking up his food and then quickly grabs him by a scruff, moving him away from the food. He sees that the kid is desperately clinging to food, unwilling to let it go, as he sternly tells him to leave. The kid then starts crying, asking Epicure to leave him alone as he's really hungry and hasn't eaten anything the whole day. Rice, hearing this, starts feeling sorry for the kid, and the kid, noticing Rice, asks our protagonist if he might be an outsider, adding that he heard outsiders give money, so he hopes he can get some help from him. Sobering him up for a moment, Epicure asks our protagonist if he's gonna do that quest, and then the kid continues saying that everyone in the slums where he lives doesn't have any money, so they've been starving for days on end. And then the kid gets even more desperate, asking Rice if he could cook for them as they are so hungry. And then a new notification window shows up explaining this quest, where he needs to make food for the kid named Laro and his family, and as a reward he can get an intermediate magic item. Rice thinks for a moment and then tells the kid that he'll cook something for them. The kid stops sobbing sobbing right there, being a bit doubtful of Rice's promise. Our protagonist then asks Epicure if he'll help him with this, because when he makes the food, he too can take as much of the food as he wants. Epicure tells him that he already completed this quest, but that he doesn't mind helping him with it. And sometimes later, we see a long table with so much delicious food spread on it, not leaving much free space. It looks really good, and there's a huge variety of food for everyone. We also see cute Electron helping around. Rice tells them that his buffet is ready and then invites everyone to have at it. People are flabbergasted seeing this much tasty looking food, and the kid, Laro, can't even believe that he's able to eat all of this. Rice assures them that they can eat all they want, as his goal is for them not to leave anything behind. Epicure, now with his stoic expression, is just thinking that our protagonist is needlessly kind to these people. Many people are surrounding the table and shyly taking the food of their choice, saying that it's been a while since they could eat something this good. And not just that, but there's also a lot of food to choose from. Laro is really enjoying himself, as he seems to know how to enjoy the food. He first pours sauce on half of the tagsuyuk, another made-up Korean name for me, so that it's sweet and crispy, which is the right texture you need this to be. Then take some flatfish sushi that gives off a clean taste from that white-fleshed fish. And then on top of that, there's some flavorful bulgogi made with mushrooms grilled over charcoal fire. And finally, he gets a thin seafood peijon with flour, and he's about to explode as soon as he tastes it. And look how much of that there is. It's like a little hill of peijon. But then he notices Epicure sitting right across him, looking at him with his dead expression. It scares him, so he feels creeped out. Epicure now sees the kid looking at him and asks him why is he starting, and calls him little thief. Laro, really nervous, responds that he's not. Our protagonist is really happy with everyone showing excitement and pleasure on their faces. He's really proud of it and now is interested in trying it himself. And then someone draws attention to Epicure and the way he's eating. The scene is of a machine eating non-stop everything that he finds in front of himself. People really admire this sight, but we know why as we see Epicure getting a stream of notifications telling him that his different stats are going up. Nothing really matches Rice's cooking in terms of the stats it gives you. We also see Meow and Electron in a fight for food as they are stretching out a piece of meat, arguing who'll take it. Rice, looking at all this, thinks to himself that this was his dream all along, a place where everyone can eat to their heart's content, and then that coupled with the fun of picking your own menu. This is what a real buffet is all about. This is the image he wants to see in real life as well, because it feels like a dream to him. And then as he was thinking about it, he gets a notification window telling him that he unlocked an achievement and he gets a benevolent heart as a reward. Then he gets another achievement unlocked called a warm hand, which he got from increasing his likability for everyone in the slums. And the reward he gets is the title, The Light of the Hungry. And as our protagonist was munching on something, he says that it's thanks to Epicure that he was able to finish the quest, but just before he could finish that thought, a loud announcement comes through from the sky saying that the Goblin Legion is breaking in and it's here. This draws everyone's attention as they are figuring out where the voice is exactly coming from. It says that it's the management team and that currently the Goblin Legion has surrounded the Beatrice estate. The voice adds that the number of the goblins exceeds 1,000, and as they look up to the sky, there's light shining on them, which is the source of the voice. And now we see that the voice is Leticia's, and then she continues saying that in 1 hour they'll be starting their big event named Protecting Labarton. And she says that users that want to help stop the Legion can make a party of 6 players and gather at the gate. Leticia adds that the group that deals the most damage to the enemies will get basic rewards and rare items related to their occupation. We see Epicure having a smug look, saying that it's finally the time for a real fight. Somewhere else we see Melina, and she's also listening to this announcement with wonder. The announcement continues saying saying that since there's not a lot of time remaining, they ask all participating users in the event to quickly gather, and the announcement ends with a wish of good luck to all the users. And then as the view of the sky gets even more incredible, with now clouds swirling around the light that is showing a newly set up timer counting down to the beginning of the event, and we see a truly magnificent sight of everyone looking up to the sky, waiting for this goblin invasion. Now, with the timer counting down, with only 1 hour left until the start of the event, we see people frantically looking to form parties. Epicure then asks Rice if he'd join his party, to which our protagonist happily agrees. They bump fists and it becomes official with a notification telling them that they formed a party, and now they need to find 4 more members, but Epicure doesn't have anyone else in his friends list besides Rice, so he asks our protagonist to find someone. Rice excitedly goes through his list of friends, where he first invites Aether, then Melina, Seekin, and finally Macho King, and they all happily accept Rice's invitation. A few moments after, everyone shows up, teleporting to where the Rice is, with only Macho King teleporting on his back. We now see that Epicure is the leader of the party, and they then introduce themselves to Epicure and Macho King, as the rest of them didn't meet them before. Seeing everyone running around, acquiring points and other items they might need for the event, one of them suggests that they might need some equips as well. Rice says that they don't need it, as he has prepared something better for them, and then just a moment after, he pulls out his unbelievable curry that provides a buff for about 30 minutes. They are all amazed with how good the food looks, but then Rice tells them that that's not all, and then he uses his now upgraded discerning chef's eye to see what best would go with curry to top up their stats. And following the chef's discerning eye and combining the food according to its recipe, our protagonist produces the most beautiful combination so far, called Best Curry Rice Bowl. The stats it gives itself are amazing, but the taste of the food is even better, as each of them tries it and absolutely enjoys it to their fullest. And thanks to this incredible meal, their combat power goes up to 200%, and they all look really ready for the event. And a bit later, we see people really excited about this VR battle. Some of them discuss who they think might actually come out as a winner of this, with one of them suggesting Who Noobs, which is a famous magician in the game. And then an announcement from the management interrupts their conversations, saying that the event Protect Labarton will start soon, and that all participating parties should finish their preparation. The last seconds start counting down, with Rice's party fully ready for it. And then on the other side, we see goblins shouting that they'll burn Beatrice down, and they shout praises for Sir Idrian. Macho King is pretty tensed up, but Aether says that it's just a game. And then as their air clears out, on the other side, they see not just goblins, but big wooden golems behind them, and this whole army looks pretty menacing. The countdown is over, and we can hear the goblins advancing already and attacking the gate of the Beatrice estate. Aether asks Macho King to make the rock trees grow, and he uses those trees to quickly make some powerful catapults right there. And then they fire off the catapults to see how it works, and to Goblin's shock, it deals a lot of damage as the huge boulder falls on them and blasts a bunch of them away, and everyone seems pretty happy with these results. We see Meow taking a charge and knocking a bunch of goblins like bowling pins with its upgraded attack. People are really shocked seeing this cute little cat doing that much damage. Epicure gets attacked by some goblins, but he defends himself with ease. His battle perception is really high, so there's no way anyone can ever sneak up on him, which is what one of the goblins tries to do and gets absolutely destroyed. There are two players getting distracted with how realistic and good the game looks in this event, and as they are about to get attacked by goblins, Melina comes and saves them at the last moment in her server style. Meanwhile, we have Seekin enhancing Macho King's power with his special ability called War Song, and Macho King becomes really strong overflowing with energy. He starts blasting goblins everywhere, which attracts Melina's attention. She's distracted now, and one of the goblins uses this opportunity to attack her and deal some damage. And as he was about to get another one, she manages to defend herself this time with a skill called Complaint Shot. She gets attacked again, and this time she's unprepared to protect herself, but in the last moment Aether shows up and uses some of his practical gadgets to trap the goblin attacking Melina and to send him flying to the sky like he's a member of Team Rocket. Aether then approaches Melina, helps her get up, and says that their goal is not winning but staying alive until the end, and Melina is really appreciative and respectful to him. The announcement then says that the number of goblins started reducing and our party is pretty happy about it, but they are still away from their goal. So Epicure asks our protagonist if he's got any team buffs, and Rice remembers one and then activates it. Everyone gets an additional 10% on their base stat with Rice's Cheer of Satiety, and everyone is now even more motivated as they plow through hordes of goblins. We see that Epicure is an absolute unit with how he deals with the enemies. They don't stand a chance against him, and even the cute Electron is doing significant damage, frying goblins with his lightning bolt powers. And then we see the wood golem slowly advancing towards them with an announcement saying that since half the time passed, they now have to deal with the new enemies. As the second phase approaches, we see people panicking, saying that tanks should go to the front and heavy dealers to the back. Seeing these wooden golems coming forward, Rice starts thinking of his conversation with Simon and what they talked about, which is collecting the small golem statue parts, where Simon told him that something interesting would happen once he collects all of the parts. Our protagonist really hopes that something worthwhile will come out of that, and in the meantime we see a red-headed lady with a chef uniform enjoying some food she made for herself and throwing a casual comment about an important battle happening. She says that she doesn't really care about it and is just watching it, as there's nothing better than eating food and watching something interesting. And then right at that moment a giant golem statue appears that makes her spit out her food in shock, recognizing what it is. It's a Dolareo Bang, the enlarged version of the little statue Rice was collecting. And we see all the members of Rice's party surprised by this as they try to figure out on whose side is this giant thing. All of a sudden, our protagonist notices something really interesting, that his vantage point became really high, and then he realizes that it's because he became the giant stone golem. Rice is now trying to work out what he's supposed to do with his golem, and right then he receives the notification telling him that he is in control of this golem as an exclusive skill he got, and he also gets an attack with it. Seeing this, our protagonist immediately understands what he needs to do, so he then takes the wooden golem that was standing next to him and slams it to the ground with an enormous force. Noticing an opening that Rice left for them, his party attacks and the battle rages on. At the game management